only there. Hello, everybody. You can't see me yet, but you should be able to hear me. And Mark's here, of course, as well.
Hello,
and
everybody.
This, yes, is the show. So I just need to make sure that it actually is playing live. And boom, it's working. Excellent. And hey, how's everybody doing? I feel like a game show host just running out of the game show floor. Hey, Sandy is here, and Herman's here, Peter's here, I am here, Mark is here.
I'm here.
Yes. All right, so this week we are going to do on-camera flash, which is why I'm using my tiny and sort of pathetic looking EOS M camera. I basically never use these cameras for taking photos except to demonstrate things, because these were used and dedicated to being my video cameras until I upgraded to all the Panasonics. So I'm actually on the verge of selling all of these, or almost all of these that I have, but who cares about that?
So we timed demo perfect because you haven't got rid of it yet.
Exactly. Hello, PTAX. How's it going? Hey, Steve. Awesome. Love seeing you guys join us every week. So let's start with our usual, because we love to know what you guys have been up to and share what we've been up to. The week in photography. Hey, Emmanuel's here as well. So let us know what you guys have been up to, what your week has been like with your photography, or what's coming up. And Mark, you want to share what's been going on with you?
Sure. I think last week we talked about it. I did a photo shoot with a local model.
Yes.
And edited it, and she was thrilled with them. And then also, just the past weekend, I did a family photo shoot, and they absolutely loved the photos when they were done. The one little girl, she's like 2 or 3 years old. That's just a real cutie. It's hard not to get a bad photo of her, no matter what she was. So, but the only bad thing about that shoot is because she's short and I'm getting old, I spent a lot of time crouched down taking the photos, and I blew my knee out. So it's feeling a lot better now. But that's about all that I've have on the go. Other than, well, I received a sampler pack from Red River for some like rag paper to try out. So
nice. So you gonna run a couple of prints on that?
Yeah, I'm going to. Not yet. I just showed up just this evening, so I haven't really.
Okay.
Other than opening it up and looking at it, that's about all I've done. It's like, ooh, yep, this paper.
Right. All right. So we got it. Yeah. Well, I remember though, when I first tried printing some of my own, I did that same thing. I got a sample pack of, I can't remember the company, but they had a bunch of rag papers, and I was just as excited. Like, good paper is really, really nice, and it's really fun to experiment with the print styles on it.
Yeah.
All right, so we got to say hello to Scott and Judy and Iman and Ultra, who have all joined us. Welcome, everybody, and again, let us know. Yep, let us know what you guys have been up to. I have been working on what is coming this Friday. So this Friday is the official launch of my Mastering Lightroom video course. I'm really excited about that. And if you're already on my mailing list, you will be the first to know when the course is live and available to purchase. And I want to let you guys know that the launch price is going to be the lowest price will ever be available for. So if you're interested in this Lightroom course that I have and learning how to use Lightroom to the best of your ability for your workflow, for your style to edit your photos, watch your inbox for details on that on Friday. And I don't want to make this a whole sales pitch, so that's all I'm going to say about it until maybe the end. But that's what I've been working on. I've been spending a lot of time on that. The other thing that I've been working on is just getting ready to take possession of the house. So we are doing that also this Friday at 9 a.m. We go close on the house, and then we'll be able to get in there and start working on it. And that means I'll be working on my new studio, not just the new studio, but the whole house in general. But I'm excited about that. That's really great. And then I've been editing photos as well. And this is amazing to me, because I thought I was much further behind than I actually am. But I am caught up. on all of the emails that I had been falling behind on the last few months because I was working on the course and all the videos and all the content and all the other stuff. I caught up on all the emails, and then I moved on from the emails finally to the YouTube comments, and I spent the better part of today and some of this week as well going through all that. And I am happy to say that I am almost completely caught up on my YouTube comments as well, and all of the stuff that people have been asking about and looking for help on. So I feel really good about that, because I always feel bad when I fall behind and somebody's asking a question and they have to wait, weeks or months in this case, to get an answer from me. I always feel bad, but sometimes that's the reality of things.
Yeah,
So,
when you have life going on, it's difficult to get the things right away.
Exactly. So Roberto and Spicy Turtles and Classic Mama, they just joined us as well. Peter says, I've got a calm week photo-wise, only took a self-portrait I'm not overly fond of. I've taken some of those self-portraits myself. All right, so we are going to talk about on-camera flash. And to start with on-camera flash, what the most important thing you need to understand is how the flash works with your camera. Roberto says, I just had a photo exhibit last Friday and I'm dead, so I'll just watch on the TV, but I wanted to say hi. That's no problem. Definitely relax. Also, congratulations on that photo exhibit. That is fantastic. Yeah, I hope it went really well, and that's really cool. If there's a link, Roberto, to the exhibit online, shoot me or Mark a message and we can share it in the chat. But otherwise, relax, enjoy the show. All right, so on camera flash, the most important thing is understanding, first of all, how your flash and your cameras work together. Because what often happens is when somebody that is new to cameras and or photography, and particularly flash photography, you get your camera and you start shooting and you're doing photos in low light situations and things of that nature, and you're struggling with low light shooting, because every photographer, every camera, no matter how amazing it is, you always struggle with low light, because low light is just difficult to shoot in. Some cameras are better than others, but we all end up in low light situations where we're going, oh my God, this sucks, I wish I had more light, right? And then you think, well, if I get a flash, I'll have more light. And then you put the flash on the camera and you think, okay, I've got a flash, now I should be able to just keep doing what I was doing with the camera, but have the flash fix everything for me and let me shoot with faster shutter speeds in low light and get these great, beautiful, amazing looking photos. But it just doesn't work that way, because of all of the stuff that we've been talking about with flash in general over the last several weeks, but also because of how your camera and your flash work together. You need to understand how this thing works with your camera in order to use it effectively. So the first thing I want to discuss is the difference between TTL flash and manual flash. And we've talked about this before, but I want to briefly cover it again. And I need to get a drink of water. So Mark, you want to take this?
Sure. So the biggest difference between TTL and manual is that TTL will basically, the camera will send out a pre-flash and measure the power of the flash, and then basically adjust accordingly to, so it'll pump out the power to give what it thinks is a proper exposure. Versus manual flash, you set it and you just shoot. But I guess the disadvantage of that is that if you say you set it on quarter power and you get a good exposure, then you move around, maybe you're closer to your subject next time, then suddenly your exposure is too bright. So it's a catch-22. There's advantages and disadvantages to both.
Right.
Kind of learn the ins and outs of how manual flash works. You can quickly adjust on the fly to compensate.
Right, that's exactly right. So with TTL is essentially auto mode for your flash, which means the flash will automatically adjust the power as you're shooting. Whereas manual mode on your flash is like manual mode for your camera. Once you set it, it won't change, and the power output will remain consistent until you change it again. So Herman says, I just had that problem with my speed light in my past weekend. My shoot went so wrong because of low light. But then he says, but now I will know how, thanks to the great Spyros. Thank you for that. And Mark and I are very happy to be able to share our knowledge with all of you and help you guys learn how to use this. So When you're using manual flash or TTL flash on your camera, one of the most important things you need to understand is that your camera now treats the situation as it should, which is to say that it treats the situation as if you have two different light sources. And we've been talking about this over these past weeks. You have your ambient light and you have your flash. And this is really, really important because this is what trips up people when they first get a flash and they put it on the camera and they think, okay, now I can go shoot in low light and everything's going to be amazing. So here's how it works. And it's going to vary from mode to mode on your camera. And this is what really trips people up. So I'm going to start, and I got to change the mode. I'm not used to this camera compared to my other one. I'm going to start in program auto mode just for the purposes of the demonstration. And you'll have to bear with me tonight too, because in order for you guys to see the photos, what I have to do is take the photo, connect the camera to the computer, and quickly download the photo so that it'll show up on the screen for you guys. But in program auto, I'm going to take a picture first without the flash. And what program auto is going to do, I got to reset my exposure compensation too, by the way. What program auto as a mode is designed to do is just try to get you a zero exposure. You control the aperture. In program auto, you control the ISO. The camera controls the aperture and the shutter speed for you. And it's just going to try to set your aperture and your shutter speed so that you get enough light for a zero exposure. So I'm at ISO 100. And I'm going to take a photo of my model here, Lisa, and I wanted to put the camera up to my face like this, but I can't because there's no viewfinder on it. Shows you how little I use this for taking photos. And right now, it's saying that my shutter speed is going to be 1/5 of a second at f5.6 with an ISO of 100. Now, I know that 1/5 of a second is going to be too slow of a shutter speed for me to hand hold. So I'm going to increase my ISO accordingly in order to get a fast enough shutter speed for a handhold photo. Now, to do that, I need to figure out how to change my shutter speed. Let me touch the little, oh, I can't change my shutter speed. I'm changing my ISO, silly. So I'm going to go up to, let's see, 5 to 10 to 25 to 10 to 25 to 50. 150 should be good enough. So if I jump up to ISO 800, it puts me at 1/40th. I'm going to go up to ISO 1600 just to be on the safe side here. And now I'm at 1/80th of a second and f5.6 at ISO 1600. So I'm taking the photo. Let me quickly download it and you guys can see it. And it's going to be a fine photo, not very remarkable, just a photo. You should automatically know what to do with this device, Windows. I just spent the whole
pre-show.
Yeah, the whole pre-show setting it up. Okay, blah, none, blah, blah. Okay, that should be fine. Import. And there it goes. Okay, so that worked. It showed up as I expected it to. So this is the photo, and it's fine. It's not good. It's not bad. It's fine. Okay. But what we need to understand is now that I've taken a particular photo and looked at it, right? Let's say I was not happy with the fact that I had to shoot ISO 1600. And I think to myself, okay, well, I've got a flash now. If I put the flash on my camera and turn the flash on and use it in TTL mode, well, now I should be able to shoot at ISO 100 and still have a good shutter speed and still have my flash take care of the situation. But what's going to happen here, and let me change something here real quick, folks, because I want you guys to be able to see the view options. Let's see, in loop view, show info overlay and file name and copy name. We don't care about capture date and time. We want common photo settings, exposure and ISO. There we go. And we'll do lens setting there. There we go. Okay, now you can see the settings as well. So you see 1/80th of a second at f5.6 and ISO 1600. Now, I'm going to put the flash on, and what's going to happen is the flash is going to fire, but it's not going to change the exposure settings of the camera all that much, because the camera only wants to get you a decent photo. So if I'm right, if this works right, because I usually think it works right, but then sometimes it fails me, I've got the flash on.
Auto modes are so unpredictable.
Yeah, I'm going to take my ISO and set it down to 100 under this false assumption. Okay. No, this is right. Okay, this is right. And take the photo with the flash. Okay, so now I was wrong in what I was initially saying, because you're going to see when this photo downloads here, and again, give me a moment here to do it, import, that number one, it is an ugly photo, but number two, the shutter speed is the same, okay? The shutter speed is 1/60th of a second. It's almost the same. It's not exactly the same. It was 1/80th before. Now it's 1/60th. It's f5.6, but it's ISO 100. Okay, and here's what Program Auto does with a TTL flash. When you're shooting a TTL flash, Program Auto has one goal and one goal only, which is to get you a shutter speed of 1/60th of a second and an aperture of, you know, as wide as it can get for your lens. Because if you put a flash on in Program Auto, what the camera assumes is you are in low light and you're just trying to pound some light into the scene to light up your subject. So in a pinch, if you just wanted to put your flash on the camera and have your flash do the work for you, putting light into the scene in a low light situation, you put your camera in Program Auto, set your ISO to 100 and let her rip. And if you use the flash like this, just pointing straight ahead, you'll get photos like this that you're looking at on the screen, which I think we can all agree are not very flattering, right? What do you think, Mark?
Absolutely.
That's a prize winner, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hey,
I win lots of contests with that one.
Yeah, I'll win a ton of contests with that photo.
Yeah.
Want to say hello to Sully, who just joined us? How's it going, man? So that's how TTL Flash works when you're using Program Auto. Now, all of you here are probably beyond Program Auto, which means you're shooting in manual mode or one of the priority modes, aperture or shutter priority mode. And this is where people get really tripped up when it comes to how the automatic TTL Flash will work with the camera. Because if you're doing run and gun, right, like you're running around a wedding or something and you're shooting and you think to yourself, okay, I don't want to shoot at ISO 1600. I want to shoot at ISO 100, but I want to use my flash to fill that light into the scene and take care of the situation so I can get an aperture of whatever and a shutter speed of, you know, at least 1/60th of a second or whatever it is for your lens so that you can get a sharp photo. Okay, but I just switched over to aperture priority mode, and I'm going to leave my ISO at 100, and my aperture is set to f5.6, which is the widest aperture for this lens, which is just an 18-55 kit lens adapted with the Canon adapter. I'm going to take a photo, and my settings are going to be ISO 100 whoops, I'm going the wrong way. I'm actually able to get, there it is, f5.6, and it's 1/5 of a second. And this is probably going to be a little bit blurry because I was hand holding it. And we're back to an okay looking picture as far as, you know, how it's lit, because I'm not using flash, and, you know, it's relatively decently lit in here. It's not amazing, but whatever. Okay, and here's the photo. And you can see it's soft because I was hand holding the camera. Okay. Hey, Mike and Delta Dave are here. Delta Dave's got a really good question. All right, let me finish explaining this particular portion, Delta Dave, and then we'll get to your question, because that's a really good question. All right, so what a lot of people now assume is, okay, that was a situation where I'm using aperture priority and I'm at ISO 100 because I want low noise and low ISO, but it's low enough light in here that my shutter speed was 1/5 of a second. That's a typical situation when you're shooting weddings, parties, run and gun type stuff. So you think, okay, I'm going to buy a flash, I'm going to put it on the camera, and boom, now my shutter speed should be fixed because the flash is going to put more light into the scene and light everything up. But watch what happens here. All right. Let me take this photo. It's going to be another prize winner right here.
Can't wait.
Boom. Wait for it, because it's going to be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Here it comes, people. Here it comes. All righty. This actually works fairly well, this importing thing. But boom! Look at that prize winner. Okay, but here's what I want you to notice. I used a flash, but look at the shutter speed on that photo. It's 1/10 of a second, nearly identical to the shutter speed I was using before. It was 1/5 before, so it's slightly different, but you know, hand holding and slightly moving it around, it's not going to be exactly the same because the metering is going to be a little bit different. But it's basically the exact same shutter speed, even though I had a flash on the camera. Mark, you want to explain why this is?
Typically, like in the semi-manual modes, like the shutter priority and the aperture priority, whatever you have things set at is sort of where the camera wants to keep it, because you're getting a little bit more manual. So therefore, it's just balancing the flash to match what you've got things set at. So in this case, is keeping the aperture where Spyros set it, because you're in aperture priority, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So it wants to keep the aperture where it is and keep the ISO where it is, and more or less like basically keep the shutter speed where it is to keep it balanced for the ambient light is primarily how that's working. And so it'd be the same sort of scenario in shutter priority. You'd keep the shutter speed where you put it, but then the aperture would basically stay more or less where it is as well too, because it's trying to keep everything set to how the ambient light is.
Exactly. The key is the camera is exposing for the ambient light. It doesn't care if you have a flash on or not. In the priority modes, the camera is going to expose for the ambient light. It's going to use the flash as a fill light. That's all it's going to do, which means it's not going to change any of the settings that are currently set in the priority mode. And that's why I ended up with the exact same, not the exact, but almost the exact same shutter speed, even though I had flash on the camera. This is what trips people up. So you need to understand, that you can't just pop a flash on your camera in either of the priority modes and expect that you can run around and have perfect shutter speeds and have flash and light your subject up. It's not going to happen, okay? Now, what you can do is make a good
way to put it is using one of those modes is a good way if you just want to add some light to your existing exposure.
Right. You're still accounting for that existing exposure and paying attention to the settings, but you want to add a little bit of light with your flash.
Right. So if you had to shoot at ISO 1600 to get the ambient light in the aperture priority, you'd still have to be shooting at that shutter speed, or
even with the flash,
to keep the shutter speed high, and just use the flash just to fill in a little bit of light to add to it.
Exactly.
Covering everything.
Yep, that's exactly it. So I want to say hello to Emmanuel and answer Delta Dave's question. And Delta Dave's question says, why is on-camera flash bad, but ring light flash is good?
I think ring lights being good is a matter of opinion was to start with.
Yeah, but generally ring lights are accepted as good lights, and on-camera flash is kind of poo-pooed as not good lights. Here's the thing, Mark. You want to take it first?
I guess the main thing, I suppose, that sort of sets the ring light apart is that your on-camera flash is still just a small little light source, but the ring flash is usually, it depends on the ring flash, but is usually a bigger light source that you're shooting through, and so it sort of just gives you a less direct and harsh light, but usually ring lights are still a fairly harsh light.
Yes. The other thing is the position of the ring light. Okay, an on-camera flash like this is off. It's up above the flash. Okay, or up above your lens, and it is
Off
not.
axis.
Yes, it is off axis. That's exactly what I was going to. Whereas a ring light typically surrounds your lens and it puts the light directly on axis with the lens. And it may not seem like much, but that small difference in the position from here to wrapping around here makes a huge difference in the quality of the light as it hits the subject and bounces back into the camera. So those are the reasons ring lights are considered to be good lights when on-camera flash is generally considered to be bad, because that bigger surface, because it's a ring light, diffuses it somewhat, and the position of the light changes the quality enough that it gives what is generally considered a pleasing look. And everybody loves that ring light catch light in the eye as well. That's the other thing.
It's the catch light, and personally, I hate the ring light catch light myself. But again,
yeah. Right, that's preference. So Sully's also got a really good question, and he says, why do the majority of cameras not let you see what you get when you have a flash on? He says, in other words, why can't we get a constant preview with a flash? And the issue with that is the flash is an instantaneous light. In order to get a live preview on your live viewfinder, whether it's an LCD or an actual EVF on your camera, the flash would have to constantly be outputting light into the scene in order for you to be able to preview it. The only other way to get a preview of what the flash is going to look like is going to be to take a sample photo, which will capture that light in the photo, and then of course you can examine that on the back of the camera. It's just a matter of the fact that the light isn't in the scene. And the camera, I mean, maybe, 5, 10, 20 years from now, AI and computer modeling and all of these other things will be so good that we'll have AIs in our cameras that will be able to look at the position of the flash and the angle and like 3D map the room and give you a representation of what it will look like on the back of your camera. But right now, our cameras are basically dumb machines, and they just do not have the capability to model and understand what's going to happen to the light when it splashes around the scene. The only thing it can do is capture that light as it comes into the camera. So without a constant output, you're just not going to be able to see a live preview of it. It's just not going to be possible. So Delta Dave says he hates the ring light catch light too. Oh, P-Tax has a good point. He says the ring light catch light is sinister and it's cool for cosplay. And like in some situations, I do like the way the ring light and the catch light looks. And I've been meaning to build myself a DIY one so I can play with it and see if I can get a look that I like out of a ring light. But I also I'm not like gaga over it, but I don't hate it either. I like it when it's used well, basically, is what it boils down to.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's the right time and place for it, and I think, like you said, cosplay would probably work well, or if you're doing, like, you're actually looking, like you said, for a sinister look where the eyes are just sort of mean looking or something like that. That's probably the only situation where I could think where I would use it.
Right. So Christopher had a comment. He says, when I run and gun, I only use my shutter to control my ambient light, and that's a very good technique. You just need to, of course, be aware of your shutter in relationship to your camera shake and or moving subject issues. And Delta, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll finish after.
No, you go ahead, because I just had something beep at me and I got to shut it up so that we can continue talking.
Okay. The nice thing with using flash, maybe not so much using TTL, because I honestly have never tried, because I don't use TTL that often. Even when I run and gun, I don't use it. But the one advantage with using flashes, if you do have your settings set nicely, is you can typically get away with a lower shutter speed, and the flash will help freeze what you're doing if you're running and gunning in a low light situation, so you can kind of cheat the system a little bit.
Yes, that's a very good point. That's a very, very good point. I want to say thank you very much to Delta Dave for that $10 super chat. We appreciate that very much. Yep, never expected, but always appreciated. So thank you. And Sully said, awesome, thank you for answering. We are happy to do that. And Eric says, on-camera flash can cause an overexposure if I just use the ambient light metering settings. So he's wondering if on-camera flash will overexpose your image. It can, but if you're using TTL flash, it generally won't really overexpose it, because the camera is going to meter for the flash and try to output the correct being a relative term, the correct amount of light to expose the subject. So as an example, if you look at this photo that we still have on the screen here, nothing is overexposed to the point where we're losing highlights or we're losing detail or anything like that. But that being said, that particular shot is not a flattering shot, because the flash was just sort of like a fire hose of light right at the subject. So the thing I wanted to do next was very quickly cover manual mode and your TTL flash, and then do some other demonstrations and talk about how to get good results when you're shooting on camera, so that you're not just pointing it at your subject and using it like a fire hose of light. So we know that in Program Auto, TTL flash will set your aperture and your shutter speed as best as it can to get you basically 1/60th of a second, with the assumption that you can hand hold at that, and it'll pound some flash into the scene to light it up for you. And like, that's all it is. It's basically TTL flash with Program Auto is basically a hammer, and every picture is a nail, no matter what the situation is. In the priority modes, your camera will expose the ambient light the same, whether or not you have a flash on the camera or not. So you will have to be aware of your camera settings and the ISO and the aperture and the shutter speed that are being set to make sure that you get what is considered to be a good photo, whatever that might be for the situation. And then your flash is used by the camera to fill in the scene. It's not going to overexpose anything generally, although if you put it right in the face of something, it'll probably overexpose just because it's so darn close. But you're generally not going to do that. Now in manual mode, go ahead, Mark.
There's something to add on to that too before you jump to the manual mode. It's much like your camera. If, like, for example, or your model there has a black shirt.
Yeah.
If the camera is reading the black shirt, it might tend to overexpose because it's trying to get a neutral gray out of it. And same with the background being white, it might then, because the camera gets tricked. So the same goes with TTL. If it doesn't get the reading quite right, it can give you odd results, and or even worse, even inconsistent results. So if you use the same subject, change your angle a little bit and getting slightly different exposures because the camera's just taking its best guess.
Yes, yeah, that's an excellent point. The flash in TTL mode is subject to the whims of your metering mode and the fallacies of that. So as he said, in tricky exposure situations, the flash could potentially overexpose or underexpose a subject because the camera is dealing with a difficult metering situation. Very backlit subjects, other things like that. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
You could probably quickly demonstrate that by just taking a picture of your exposure being mainly on her shirt, and see how much darker or brighter. I guess in this case it'd probably be brighter, actually, how much overexposed the photo is going to be.
Yeah, I will. Let me do that. I'm going to shoot it wider, and I'm going to make sure that this thing is set to spot metering. Oh boy. Okay, metering mode, spot metering. Here we go. And spot is on the shirt. And I'll shoot this vertically so that we can get her head in there as well. This isn't going to be a beautiful shot, guys. Oh yeah, this is like a stupid long exposure because of the black shirt. This is going to be a terrible photo.
You thought the other ones were horrible.
Yeah, this one, you guys, this is like my best photo ever. I'm putting this on my portfolio website. All right, wait for it, guys. Wait for it. Here it comes. This is amazing. Look at how terrible that is. Let me rotate it real quick. Let me get my mouse over here. There we go. Look at, see, now that's because I was spot metering off of the shirt. Whoops, I goofed up something here. I didn't want to do that. I just want to clear that. Because I was spot metering off the shirt, you can see it way overexposed her head and everything with the flash as well, because the metering was fooled by that situation.
Yeah.
So Delta Dave has a question, which is, how does bouncing the flash affect TTL? And that's another excellent question. So here's, Mark described how TTL flash works earlier, which is that the flash outputs a pre-flash into the scene, whether it's pointed forward or pointed upwards.
Or sideways.
Or sideways or wherever. And then that flash bounces off whatever is around and bounces all into the scene and into the camera. And the camera meter reads that and makes an exposure estimation based on the light that hit the image sensor. So essentially, bouncing the flash, it doesn't change how the camera or the flash meters or works. The thing you need to be aware of, and let's give an example here. So first, let me back up, because I want to talk about manual and your flash. This we don't have to spend a ton of time on, because we've already been doing it all of these last number of weeks that we've been talking about flash. But just to be clear, in manual mode, you set your ambient exposure settings. Aperture, ISO, shutter speed, that's entirely up to you. You control the ambient light exposure, okay? And then the flash acts as a fill light, metering the scene just like it does in the other modes, okay? So the flash is still essentially an auto and will work to correctly, again, you know, relatively speaking, correctly expose the scene or the subject, but you have control over your ambient light, which means if you want to shoot it at 1/250th as an example, or 1/60th at ISO 100, you can, and the camera will use the flash to try to expose the scene as best as it can. Everybody follow that? I hope you guys follow that.
I'm clear.
So now, good. All right, so now we want to do a demonstration of how the bouncing affects the flash. And this is one of the quickest and easiest ways to get better results from your flash. Now, one of the things you'll notice about the photos that I've been taking is that they have been pretty close-up shots with the flash on the camera. And that is about the worst way to use it. Just me getting back away from the subject will automatically improve the quality of the photo. It's not going to be amazing. Don't expect miracles here, but it's going to be better. And I need to switch over to aperture priority is what I wanted to get into. Sorry about that, guys. So I'm in aperture priority. And I'm going to increase my ISO to give me a decent shutter speed. There we go. We're at 1/100th. Okay, and let me get this downloaded, and you guys will see. It is not great because there's still a pretty ugly shadow that hits the background behind the mannequin because it's such a direct, slightly off-axis light. But it is measurably better than the close-up headshots that we were seeing when I was, you know, not that far away. So the lighting on her is generally a little bit nicer, just because I'm a little back and it's not pounding right into the face. But it's still direct light right into the subject, hard, ugly shadows behind, not super flattering on the subject. Now, to deal with that, you can bounce the light, which is what Delta Dave was asking about. And so we're going to flip the head up and just point it at the ceiling. Now, I'm not actually going to point it straight up. I'm going to angle it a little bit because I'm going to stand. I want to get a decent-ish headshot. So I'm going to stand a little bit closer. And the idea is you want to bounce it off the ceiling and spread it out all around the subject. So my settings are exactly the same. f7.1. My shutter speed is slightly different. It's 1/80th. ISO of 3200. I didn't change that. I'm still on aperture priority. And this photo is much more pleasing as compared to the other one. And the metering is fine because the camera takes that pre-flash and reads it as an evaluation of the scene and meters for it. So there's the photo, and that's measurably better. There's no big ugly shadow behind the model. There is a bit of a shadow underneath the chin, which, like, that's not amazing, but it's really not all that bad.
Yeah.
And I would say that that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
But here's where the metering is going to fail you, okay? And it's not even that the metering is going to fail you. It's where the flash is going to fail you. Let's say I wanted to bounce my light off of the wall way the heck over there. That wall is a good 15 feet or so away from me. This flash has a limited amount of power in it. And so if I turn the flash over this way and point it at that wall, and what I'm going to do is take two shots. I'm going to take one where we bounce it off of this wall, and then one where we bounce it off of that wall to compare the two and see the difference. So we'll actually start with this closer wall over here. And again, I'm not going to bounce straight over, a little bit of an angle so that it can come at an angle and bounce at an angle to the subject. One thing to be aware of is even though it's going to go to the side and bounce off the wall, some of the light is going to go directly forward and hit the subject. Unless we flag the light, and we're not going to flag the light just yet. I will show you that difference though. And this is also a measurably better photo than just pointing it directly at your subject. Now we've got some questions and we're going to get to those in just a moment. I just want to finish this demo here real quick, guys, so we don't get all scattered.
Yeah, I'll often flag the light just putting my hand up there, and it helps bounce some light forward as well too. It's a nice natural color light because it's coming from your hand. Right.
So this here you can see now, the light is brighter on her right side and it's darker on her left side because the light was bounced off of the wall and then over to her. But now I want to show you something else. I'm going to turn off the lights for a moment. I'll just turn off the one light. And I'm also going to deliberately underexpose the scene. So that I don't end up with a super long shutter speed. And the point of this is just isolating the flash in the scene so you can see the front light bouncing on the subject. You know what, I can leave the light on for this. I don't know why I'm thinking I need to turn it on, but what I do need to do is decrease my ISO. And I'll explain how this works in just a moment. Let me take this photo. And you'll see a distinct difference because there's far less of the studio light in this scene here. And I'll explain what I just did here. Okay, see this light, this shot is distinctly less yellow because there's less of this light in the scene. And the shadows on this side of the model's face are lesser. Now, I controlled the ambient light even though I was shooting in aperture priority mode. And this is something that you can do when using TTL flash. We talked about just a minute ago how you can use manual mode where you control the ambient light, set it to wherever you want with your settings, and then you shoot. Well, you can do the same thing with your camera in aperture shutter priority mode by adjusting your exposure compensation. Because if you adjust your exposure compensation settings, I have it currently set to -3, the camera is going to underexpose the ambient light and still use the flash to expose the subject with proper fill light to properly expose it. And in doing so, I got that photo. Now I'm going to put a flag on the flash to block the light that was coming from the front and hitting from here directly onto the model's face. So now we're isolating it even further. So it's just light bouncing off the wall and then onto the subject. I keep wanting to look through this non-existent viewfinder.
A hard habit to break, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And for this, I am gonna turn off the lights for both of these again. Let me take the first one and then the second one. And then it's gonna fight me to focus. That's what flashlights are good for, but I don't have a flashlight handy that has batteries in it. Go figure. All right, I'm gonna very roughly manually focus this because the focus isn't super important. All right, so that's lights off, flash on, no flag. Now this is lights off, flash on, flag. And I'll show you the difference between the two. Hopefully you can see it. I'm still getting too much studio light. Okay, I don't want to beat this dead horse. So let's get to these questions and then we'll come back to this stuff. Let's see. I got to scroll back here. Mark, what do we got?
Got a couple of questions. Mike asked, metering mode, somehow I get best results from matrix. Do you use single focus for portraits? Metering?
Yeah, I tend to use spot focus, but whatever metering mode gives you the best results is the one you should use.
Yeah, exactly. I tend to use center point or center cluster, just because I typically want my exposure to be what I want it to be. So if I want to expose for just the background, then I expose to the background, lock it in, and switch back to the subject, and then you use flash to blend it in. But if I don't care about the background, only care about the subject, then I make sure I'm just exposing just for the subject.
Right.
So it mostly depends, but I like the center weight just because it gives me more control as to what it's metering from.
Right. So Sully's got a question, and Sully says, what would be the best modifier to evenly spread the light around the room completely, like a bounce flash, but without losing so much light? That's a tough question because these lights.
Yeah, I put a link in there for the Rogue flash bender.
Perfect.
I think that's similar to what they're thinking of, something along that line.
Yes.
Then they also asked where did it go? The mag mod. I only ever heard of mag mod like a couple of weeks ago, but I think it's basically just a smaller piece of plastic, I guess, that goes over the head of your flash to help disperse the light, which does work, but you lose a lot of power if it's the thing that I'm thinking it is.
Yeah. So before I go on, I want to say hello to Ronald Bagley, who's joined the chat and joined the live stream. And we like to say welcome to everybody who's joining us. If you've got a question, go ahead and throw it in the chat, and we will definitely try to answer it. Mike, I did see your question about the lens too, and we'll try to get to that. I know we're running low on time. It always goes so quickly.
No kidding.
The mag mod, my understanding is the mag mod is a fancier version of my Velcro, which is to say it's an accessory that you put around your flash, and there's magnets in it, and then you can easily switch out things like grids and gels and snoots and other modifiers like that, possibly even diffusion panels and stuff like that. But the Rogue flash bender that Mark linked to, that's probably, in my opinion, the best accessory to use on camera to try to diffuse your light. Now, the second part of Sully's question was, what's the best modifier to use without losing too much power, but still filling in the whole scene? And here's the thing you got to understand. These lights have a limited amount of power. What I was about to try to demonstrate, and I'm going to finish that, because you're looking at the photo here with the light from the flash on the right side of the model bounced off of this wall. Now I'm going to attempt to bounce it off the wall way the heck over there. And in doing so, we should see a minimal to no effect at all from the flash because that wall is just so far away. And there is a little bit of bounce back, but you should take a look at the photo that's on the screen right now, because you'll see that that one has a pretty decently, the highlights on the right side are nice and fairly bright. The photo that's about to come in has some highlights, but they're not as powerful.
Not as distinct.
And they're not as powerful, yeah, and not as distinct, because the wall is so much farther away. Oh, it's going to be a bunch of photos, so I'm going to have to scroll through these real quick to get you guys to the right one. So let me make sure I'm at the end. Boom. Oh, it's going through them all.
Yeah.
Good. So here it is right here. And let me make sure that's the right one.
I think so. Light's coming from the right direction.
Yeah, the light's coming from the right direction, so it looks like the right one. So what I want to do here is I want to actually compare the two side by side and see if I'm lying to you guys or not. In theory, the one should be the one on the left. Yeah, I can see a difference. Can you see a difference, Mark? I'm going to make this big for a moment and cover markup so you guys can see the photos better. The photo on the right, which had the light bouncing off of the wall that was 10 or 15 feet away, the highlights on the left side of the face are not as bright as the highlights on the right side of the face where I bounced off the wall that was just a couple feet away. And that's simply because the flash is only so powerful. And if you're bouncing or trying to fill spaces that are too big for the flash, it's just not going to be capable of putting out enough light. That's just going to be the limitation of the flash that you're using.
Yeah.
So bear in mind that that is a distinct possibility for shooting in big open spaces, that you're not going to be able to fill up the whole space. You're going to need to focus on your subject and possibly put your subject closer to the things that you want to incorporate into the scene in order for your flash to be able to also light those things up.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Now, I highly, highly, highly recommend having something like this, a flag, a stupid cheap flag, to use as an accessory. And I want to show you why. Now, with the auto, I was talking about how you can use your exposure compensation in aperture shutter priority to control your ambient light and bring it down, which I did do. Let me uncover you again, Mark. I'm sorry about that. I just got to flip this over.
That's okay. She's prettier than I am.
And fill the screen with it. Come on. There we go. And I got to switch back to grid mode and then click on this and then go to there so that we can see it. Okay, now we're back. But you have a limitation to that, because with this camera as an example, I'm not sure how well you guys can see it, but with this camera, I am limited to ±3 in terms of exposure compensation. So I can control the ambient light to a certain degree, but maybe not as much as I might want to. So when I switch into manual mode, I can now set my shutter speed up to the sync speed of the camera, which will allow me to control the ambient light even better. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to set to the shutter speed. The sync speed of this camera is 1/200th of a second. So I'm going to set it to 1/200th. And I'm going to set my aperture high-ish to like f8 because I want to black out the room. And I currently have the flash turned off. So like we've done with the manual flash situations, what we're going to end up here is essentially a entirely black photo, which is what we want. And I will show this to you guys so you can see what I'm talking about. This is another prize winner coming in, guys.
It's probably better than the other prize winner.
It is. It definitively is. And there it is. Boom. Black. Nothing there, right? So now I'm going to turn the flash on. The settings are going to stay exactly the same. I'm going to bounce it off of this wall like I did before. And now you can see dramatic difference in it. Let me bring it in there. And thank you guys for your support too. Sully and Ronald and everybody else who joins us and who enjoys these live streams. We appreciate that. That's really amazing. All right, and import. And what you will definitely be able to see now in this photo is what I was talking about with the front light that's still hitting the subject. Because if you look at this photo, you'll see that the right side of the mannequin is better lit than the left side, but you can also still see that shadow shape of her head on the back of the backdrop. And that shadow shape is coming from the light that was going from the front of the camera directly at the model, at the mannequin. When I put this stupid, cheap piece of craft foam with a little bit of Velcro on my flash, I'm going to prevent that light from hitting the front of the model's face and casting that shadow on the background. I'm also going to make these shadows on this side much darker and turn this into a much more dramatic portrait that looks like it was side lit by a softbox. Boom, here it comes. This is actually a decent, not amazing, but decent portrait. Import. And you should notice immediately what I'm talking about here.
Yep,
that the left side, the left side of the face is super dark compared to the right, and that shadow on the backdrop is gone just because of this stupid little piece of craft foam. So the key to successful on-camera flash is the same as the key to successful off-camera flash, which is understanding what's happening with your lighting, controlling it. You're definitely limited. You're limited to turning it. You're limited to pointing it, and you're limited to putting small-ish modifiers on it. But with a little bit of thought. What's that?
Said and one light source.
Yeah, and one light source. But you can still get good results. Now, I want to demonstrate off of that wall the difference in power. So I'm going to flip the flag around and point the flash at that wall. And with the ambient light gone and just the flash bouncing off of the wall and hitting the subject with no front light, I'm curious to see what the result's going to be here, to be perfectly honest. I'm thinking it's going to be pretty dark.
Yeah, that's hard to say because you do have a pretty small room there. So.
Yes, this is the thing that I'm talking about. You will see a definitive difference between the exposures on these two shots. And this is what I'm talking about, where you're dealing with the limited power of a smaller flash because it's small, it can only put out so much power. And look at that. It's just not possible for this flash to put out enough power to that wall over there. So in a situation like that, what I would do is use something like, if I was in a situation where I didn't have a wall right here, I didn't have a ceiling that was right here, and the ceiling isn't even amazing, like, because my ceiling is so low, it's not great to bounce off of. If the ceiling is higher, but not like 50 feet high or 30 feet high or whatever, but if the ceiling is, 12 to 15 feet, like, that's great for bouncing off of ceilings. Getting higher than that, you're going to start to lose the power of your flash. So if you're in a situation where you can't bounce off a wall or a ceiling because everything's just too far away, then something like, if you want the soft diffuse light, something like the Rogue Flash Bender will make a big difference. It may not be exactly what you want because you are limited to doing, this basically with it, pointing it up and then having the Rogue Flash Bender behind it, making the light a bigger. See, how the Rogue Flash Bender works is, I'm going to use my gray card to demonstrate, even though my gray card wouldn't work very well. The Rogue Flash Bender wraps around your flash, and then you have a big panel that's behind the flash. And that panel does a couple of things. Number one, you can actually put a little diffusion panel over the top so that the light is not only bounced off of the back, but also passes through a diffusion surface. And that's going to soften that light up and spread it out and make it less harsh and less specular. But you're still going to have that bounce light forward from the front of your flash, which you can't do much about. You can flag it, but you're then kind of blocking the effectiveness of that. So it's going to help spread that light out. But because it's turning it into a bigger surface, one of the things you can do is actually turn it a little bit left or right. And it's going to depend on the situation. But even a little bit left or right can just sort of feather the light off to the side and make it even softer on your subject. Because you're not putting the brunt of the light in their face, you're putting the side feather, the softest, sort of smoothest light on them. that's not going to be as powerful, but it's something that you can do to kind of control it even more and maybe get the look you're looking for depending upon what you're shooting.
Yeah, some flashes have this little built-in reflector, but realistically, that's not really meant for bouncing any light. It's really just for giving some catch light to somebody's eyes if you're bouncing off the ceiling.
Right. So A Craftsman says, so if you turned the model towards the wall and shot towards her straight, it would be like a softbox portrait. And let's do that. Turn her towards the wall. And I'm going to shoot at her straight. Okay. But I'm going to bounce the light off of the wall. I think that's what you mean, A Craftsman. And I'm going to flag it because I don't want the front light. I just want the side light. And it will be like a softbox profile portrait. So I want to turn it a little bit. Again, add a bit of an angle so that it bounces and comes at an angle rather than just straight at the wall. Some of that will get there, but you're putting the brunt of it here and it'll bounce properly if you do that. And we had a question too about slow sync and stuff that we got to come back to. And there it is. You can't see it yet, but it's coming.
Yeah.
I'm honestly surprised at how well this importing works. I was afraid this was going to be super slow and cumbersome, but it's working out pretty well.
He's using a USB cable plugged into the camera. Yeah.
Okay, so he says, sorry, I meant staying in line with her.
But you could do that. It could basically be, instead of being side light, it would be backlight.
Yeah.
So it would be like you basically dumping your flash behind you, using the wall behind you as a softbox.
Something like, I'm going to, flagging it would take away too much of the power, but I'll try that. I'll bounce it behind me.
Yeah,
and see what it does.
Power, but I think that's sort of what he's talking about, I think.
Yeah, let's give it a go and see. I'm going to come a little bit closer. I'm blind.
Yeah.
My ceiling's too low to give us a good result for doing that. I'm not sure if that's exactly the configuration you were thinking about, A Craftsman, but I'll show you guys what that looks like. But Mark's right. Another good opportunity can be bouncing it off of a wall that's behind you.
Yeah, I've done it before.
Yeah, and if it's a good wall behind you, you can actually diffuse it nicely. So that almost basically looks as if I just pointed it at her. Because my ceiling is too low, it basically just went up and then went right back into her. But it kind of gives you the idea. So we didn't get to talk as much about modifying as I actually thought we were going to. And I want to take a few minutes to kind of wrap up on that and hit these questions that we didn't have. So I'm going to scroll back on the chat here for a minute, Mark, and make sure we've caught all the questions.
Yeah, I think the only thing we didn't get was the question about the 70 to 200 and front and rear curtain sync, which I think is what Herman was talking about.
Yes.
He's talking about speed, light, and slow and rear. So I think he means like front and rear curtain, but I think every manufacturer calls it something different.
Okay. Let me answer the questions, Delta Dave, and then we'll do that. And A Craftsman, if you can try to describe a little bit better what you were talking about, we can try that too, so you guys can see what it looks like. And I know sometimes trying to communicate positioning through a chat isn't the easiest. But Mike's question about the 70 to 200 and using the lens and getting the best results, it kind of depends on what you're shooting. But honestly, my best recommendation for that is, number one, just shooting with it and getting a feel for hand holding that and deciding, like, is this a lens that I can hand hold and I'm comfortable hand holding and shooting, or is this something that I'm going to want a monopod or a tripod or something with? Because that determination can make a huge difference in your photos. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, just a couple of things you have to remember is if you're shooting at the long end at 200 millimeter, you're going to need faster shutter speed to compensate for the longer focal length. Another thing too is with some lenses is sometimes if you're shooting at like the full extent, like at 200, or at the other extent at 70, sometimes the lenses are not quite as sharp as you would like them to be. So you might, instead of shooting at 200, maybe shoot at like 190 or 195, or instead of shooting at 70, maybe shoot at 75 or 80.
Mm-hmm.
Wide open, same sort of thing. Typically lenses aren't as sharp wide open, but that's sort of standard with any lens. And then also at the other end, if you have it stop right down, you'll start losing sharpness as well too. But I think the big thing is keeping the shutter speed for the long focal length is really the big thing.
Right. That determining if you're comfortable hand holding and shooting with it.
Right.
And then after that, it's, figuring out the kind of scenarios you want to use it in, because like I remember, this wasn't a 70 to 200, but I remember when I very first got my very first camera, like I'm talking the original Canon Rebel back in 2000 or 2001. I immediately thought, oh my God, I need a zoom lens, right? Now I didn't get no 70 to 200 millimeter because I didn't have the kind of money for that back then. But I got a 70 to 300. I got basically your standard kit zoom. And I pretty quickly realized that for the shooting that I was doing at that time, I didn't need a zoom lens. I almost never used that zoom lens because I just didn't shoot the kind of photos that really called for that. So, Mike, I'm not saying that you didn't, that you bought a lens uselessly, right? I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is, like, focus on the kind of photos you want to shoot with that lens, and essentially go do some testing and see how it feels, how it shoots, the kind of results that you get, and look for where your problems are if you're having problems with it. And then, it's easier to come back with problems that you might, or challenges you might be having, and try to fix a solution or find a solution, rather than, just say like, because to say like, how do you get good photos with that lens? Well, like Mark said, basically you need to make sure that you're holding the camera steady enough and that you got a fast enough shutter speed. And if the lens and camera are sharp, then everything should be fine.
Mm-hmm. But if you do have specific questions, you can obviously just drop it in the Facebook or send either one of us a message, and we'll help out where we can.
Yep. And I'm not trying to like diminish your question. It's just to say that it's a very general question, and with something like that, generally it's really just a matter of shooting with it and getting a feel for it and finding out what you want to use it for.
Yeah.
So what Delta Dave said it correctly. So he said, turn the model 45 degrees and then bounce the flash off the wall. So that's basically this here. Now I'm going to move it all back a little bit just because I don't want to bounce directly off of my air conditioning unit, which is the angle I kind of need to be at. I am going to use the flag. And so what we're trying to accomplish here is basically killing the monster shadow that was coming in on this side of the face when the poltergeist, when the model was looking straight forward. By turning the model, whoops, I just popped her head off. How creepy is this, guys? Look at my model. Okay, so with my model looking at the wall, and if I'm bouncing the light off of the wall, I'm essentially going to bounce the light directly into the face and get kind of a softbox look. We're shooting a broadside portrait, so we're not going to see all of this side of the face, the back side, but we'll see a little bit of it, and it should be fairly well lit. So that should be at a pretty decent angle. And I'm actually going to come in tighter and change my angle a little bit.
Sandy's correcting you. It's The Exorcist, not Poltergeist.
The Exorcist, not Poltergeist. And you'll see we still got shadow, but the principal planes of her face now are lit. And the reason there's still shadow is because I flagged it. I'll take another one without the flag so we can compare the two of them. Exorcist, not Poltergeist. I was never a horror movie buff. My wife, on the other hand, is a huge horror movie buff. She loves horror movies. Okay, so let me take this shot and then we'll discuss that other one real quick. They're pretty similar, actually, the two of them. But you can see, like, the face is lit Let me look at this other one here and compare. Yeah, there's a little bit more light in there. So this one, I think that's about to come in without the flag is slightly better because the darker shadows on the broad side, the back side of her head are filled in a little bit by that front light. And the angle is such that we're not really getting that ugly, big, ugly shadow on the wall that we were getting earlier.
Yeah, but again, this sort of shows the limitations of what you can do with the on-camera flash.
Yeah. So we got to talk about the slow and the rear. Now, slow. Like, what is that? Like, this is a genuine question that I have to think about for a moment. What is slow versus rear? I think they're the same.
It is, slow shutter speed, I think is what it is, but using first curtain or second curtain or whatever the particular manufacturer calls it on the camera.
Right.
So I think it's like a shutter speed with either first or second curtain flash.
Right. Okay, so this is something we talked about like in one of the very first flash shows that we did out here, but we can certainly cover this again. And I can actually demonstrate it. You guys are going to get a little bit blinded, but I think it's worth showing it to you. So Mark talked about the pre-flash. The flash puts out a pre-flash. We don't actually see it because it happens so fast, but that pre-flash is what allows the camera to meter. And then immediately after the shutter opens, the camera fires the flash for the photo. That's the standard method. That's called first curtain or standard sync. Slow sync or rear curtain sync means that the flash fires right before the shutter is about to close. Now, if you're shooting faster shutter speeds, like the sync speed of 1/200th of a second, or even, what was that, Mark?
So if you're shooting with a higher shutter speed, it really makes no difference. It's
right.
Only for long shutter speeds.
Exactly. But for long shutter speeds, what will happen is the pre-flash will go, and I'll show it to you. I'm going to set the shutter speed here to 1 second, and I'll set the flash to rear sync, and it's in TTL mode. And what's going to happen is you guys are going to see the first flash. That's the pre-flash for the metering. And then you'll see the second flash, which is actually the photo finishing and the flash firing right before the end of the photo. So this is going to be an awful photo, guys. So prepare yourselves. And I'm going to actually just point the camera directly ahead. So brace yourselves. I'm about to fire the flash.
You want us to smile?
Yeah, smile. Pre-flash. Oh, it happened too fast. Let me make it an even longer shutter speed. So I'm going to go for 4 seconds. Again, this is going to be an awful photo, guys. Prepare yourselves. Oh, that's still way overexposed. Let's just take it all the way up here. Okay, so we're at F29, 4 seconds. TTL, oh, I forgot to put it on rear curtain sync. Haha, I'm a fool. Okay, this is the pre-flash. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom. That was the second curtain flash. So what happens, and what that is good for, the reason you might use that is to change the way you're capturing motion in the scene. Because with first curtain sync, with the standard sync pattern, what's going to happen is if you're photographing motion, let's say I'm walking through the scene, and you take a picture of me for 4 seconds, and you want to capture the motion of me walking, but you also want to freeze me at a point in the shot. And you want it to look like there's a big streak of me walking behind and me frozen at the end. So it looks like a motion trail is behind me. Well, if you work with first curtain sync, it's not going to work. It's actually going to be backwards because the flash is going to fire immediately, freezing me here. And then you'll see a motion trail in front of me, making it look like I was walking backwards.
Yeah.
Okay. So what second curtain sync does is allows me to walk through the scene for the 4 seconds of exposure, and then right before the photo finishes, the flash fires, freezing me with all of that motion captured behind me. So that's basically the purpose of slow or rear curtain sync. And it's sometimes called slow sync because you typically use it with slow shutter speeds. Because with faster shutter speeds, it really makes no difference.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that answered his question.
Yes. And I think we got everybody else's questions.
I think so. Quickly looking through, I think we got everything.
Excellent. So I wanted to ask a question before we wrap this up. which is what Mark and I were discussing doing for next week, because we wanted to try something different, try to take this on location and get it out of the studio. So here's the idea. We have to make sure that we can do this, but we should be able to do this, which is I've got, in fact, let me grab it. I gotta find it. It's in one of these little, here it is. I knew I had it. This here is a cheapy 10-stop variable neutral density filter. So what this does is allows me to vary how much light is blocked from getting into the camera just by spinning the filter ring, and it changes how dark the gradient is, not the gradient, but the filter actually is. And what these are useful for is photographing long exposure photos during the day when it's still light and bright out. And so what Mark and I were thinking about doing was taking this out of the studio on location with just the cell phone, because I can't take this whole rig out with me, and showing you guys how to use something like this to take long exposure photos during the day, and what kind of results you can get out of that. So if that's something you guys would like to see, let us know in the chat right now before we wrap this up. And Sandy had a question. She says, yep, and Mark just answered in the chat, so I don't need to. Perfect. All right, so let us know what you guys think of this idea of us taking this out on the road. It would be live streams from the cell phone, so it would just be one angle. I would have to hold my camera up to the phone to show you guys the photos, because I don't think there would be any other way. Although,
so what about
maybe
Lightroom Mobile?
I don't know. Well, see, but if I'm streaming from the phone, I wouldn't be able to use Lightroom Mobile at the same time. But, you know, I could maybe bring my laptop out, and we could stream from the laptop like I did outside the studio.
Right, but outside the studio,
on
you
location.
were using your network, though, weren't you?
Yeah, I would basically have to use my mobile network, which would be okay for me because I have unlimited data.
Right.
So I would use my mobile hotspot. We could stream from the laptop. I could bring, it'd still be just one angle, and I would then be able to tether with Lightroom.
Just use your webcam.
And I mean, I could use my webcam, but that would be a really shitty angle. We'll see. Yeah. We'll figure it out. But I think that's what we're going to try. So A. Craftman says yes, capital YESSSSS. Anybody else want to weigh in on this before we wrap it up?
You better show up next week then.
Right. I think that's what we're going to go ahead and do, because it's something I've been wanting to try anyway. So that's our tentative plan. Right, assuming the weather cooperates. And right now, here at least, the weather is supposed to be 97 degrees Fahrenheit here next Wednesday, which is 36 degrees Celsius, which is bloody awful hot. But I will suffer.
So you don't burn your noodle.
Yeah, I will suffer for you if you want us to do this. Sandy says I'd be interested in that. I'm trying to learn about filters as well. So it sounds good. We'll work on that. Mark, any closing words before we wrap this up and go?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm good.
All right. Watch out for the Roberto says yes. Sully sounds like a great idea. Awesome. And you know, I really want to work it out so you guys can see the photos right away, because it's not nearly as fun if you can't see the results of what we're doing, right? Because then you're just watching us do something that's not very exciting. You know, the photos really make the difference. So we'll work it out so you guys can see the photos. It'll be something with my laptop, I'm sure. But keep an eye on my YouTube channel or your inbox if you're subscribed to my email list for my Lightroom course. It's coming out this Friday, as I mentioned earlier. And we're going to have a great discount for the launch of it. So if you're interested in learning a lot about Lightroom and how to use it, that'll be coming. Mark and I will be back next week, hopefully on location.
That's the plan.
Yeah, that's the plan. I am not going to be live stream editing this Friday because we are going to be taking possession of the new house, which means we're going to be getting over there and trying to get to work right away. I may do an impromptu watch me tear shit out of my new house live stream from my phone. If you want to see me do some demolition, you can tune in for that. But it won't be an editing live stream. And of course, you know, regular videos on Tuesday, all that sort of stuff. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you so much, Delta Day, for that super chat. We always appreciate everybody's support. You guys are amazing. Make sure you get out there and take some damn photos. Mark and I will see you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Now, again, I got to find all the stop buttons. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Sandy. She says, congratulations for the new house. Here we go. All right. Good night, everybody. This is official. Bye-bye.